What is going on, Macro Perspective peeps? Man, I am excited for this. So Marcos and I have been looking forward to this, done our homework here, but we've got Dr. Aron D'Souza, world renowned, known for a lot of things, but we really want to talk today about the enhanced games. That's right. Aaron, we call you Aaron or Dr. Aaron. Which do you like more on the pod?
Aaron.
Well, Aaron, I think you had, for me personally, like the coming out party on the Joe Rogan podcast, the Enhanced Games, right? And it took the world by storm. Marcos and I work in the clinical world of like human optimization. So for us, we're like, this is awesome. But before we get into some of the questions we've keyed up for you that we set up, just give us a little bit of background on yourself for the audience here, and kind of just like, what was the big turning point for you to be like, okay, we need to make this happen?
Yeah, so just as a way about background, I'm a lawyer by training. I have a PhD in intellectual property law, which is the law of patents and copyrights. I have a law degree from the University of Oxford. When I was 24 years old and a first-year law student at Oxford, Peter Thiel, the co-founder of PayPal and venture capitalist, recruited me. I ended up working for him, and I continued to be a partner of his in many ventures. And I ended up leading his litigation against Gawker Media involving the wrestler Hulk Hogan, where we won the largest invasion of privacy judgments in history, and it's the subject of the best-selling book Conspiracy by Ryan Holiday. After that, I went on to build nearly 10 companies across asset management, education, and a lot of other fields. But today I'm focused on building the enhanced games because I could not think of anything better to do than to upgrade the human species. And I believe that change only happens when someone puts a suit on and goes to work every day trying to solve a problem. And until I came along, there was no one who was trying to reform the Olympic movement. There was no one who was trying to, in a serious way, take doping and make it something serious, intellectual, scientific, clinically driven, and supported by medical evidence. And we've been able to transform the whole discourse in less than 2 years and break a bunch of world records along the way.
I know, it's so crazy. I'm gonna let Marcos take a few of the first questions because actually he had some great insight, right, Marcos, on some of those questions we teed up. And he put a lot of thought into those after kind of doing it. So I'll let you take some of the first few questions there, Marcos.
Yeah, because I know, I think I've listened to maybe 2 or 3 things with you on it or other people. I'm assuming it's only you, though, but talking about just safe and effective ranges, right? Get optimal. So what does that really look like in terms of monitoring this? I feel as though I hear that, or I haven't heard ranges related to testosterone or whatever else that they're trying to utilize peptides, and it made me kind of curious as to you're still governing it and there's still this optimization route, but is there no limit? Can someone be running a gram of testosterone, which would not really be all that safe if this is medically supervised enhanced games?
Yeah, so the correct analysis is not on a exon basis, what should one put into their body, but rather what is the output of that. And so every athlete who competes in the enhanced games has to be subject to a very rigorous independent health assessment, in particular for cardiac risk. And that health assessment is overseen by our independent medical commission, which is chaired by Professor Dr. Guido Pilas, who was the chief doctor for FIFA. And as part of that assessment, they have to undergo echocardiograms, MRI, and blood assessments. And an athlete may choose to use a significant amount of testosterone, as the example you indicated, as long as their health indicators, i.e. their heart size, for example, are within acceptable clinical tolerances, that is allowed. Because every human will respond differently to different substances. And actually, elite athletes are in a category of their own and are hard to compare with ordinary humans in the amount of substances and their reactions to them.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a really great point.
That's an interesting way of breaking it down. And then, so heart size, sorry, what were the other 2 things that you said?
So the core measurement tools are echocardiograms, MRIs, and blood work. And so there will be things like heart size, ejection rates, etc. Now, I'll have to admit, I am a doctor, but I have a PhD in patent law. If you want to go into the absolute specifics of cardiac function, I can connect you with Dr. Piles, and I'm sure he'd love to talk to you about that in excruciating detail. But the team has developed very specific clinical indicators which are easily measurable using modern technology that can be done on an ongoing basis. So things like a an MRI, for example, will only need to be done at most every few months, probably even every 6 months. But things like an echocardiogram can almost be done in real time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair way of assessing it because, like you just said, everybody could try a bunch of different variants of X, PEDs in a sense, and that allows anybody to kind of tap into what they think would be the best quote unquote cocktail of getting them to where their performance outcomes are going to win, and also win quote unquote world records. I mean, is there kind of an asterisk next to these because we are now on the fringes of utilizing, medications and things that were not normally validating some level of world record previously?
Yes, historically, the moral touchstone of competition in the Olympics was not about natural human ability, but it was rather about amateurism. So from 1896 until 1992, only amateur athletes were allowed to compete at the Olympics. And if you
Yeah,
accepted $1 of funding or $1 of sponsorship, you were anathema to Olympic values. And
Yeah.
so during that period, there were amateur world records and there were professional world records, two separate categories to recognize that it had different outcomes. So we don't say that the world records are universal. There are natural world records governed in the old system and enhanced world records. Now, what is the consequence of that? Well, I believe as human beings, we are only interested in seeing the very best of human performance. That's why professional records overtook the amateur records, because we weren't really concerned about these moralizing spirit of sport concepts that the Olympics put out. We as consumers were only interested in seeing the very best of human performance. And I think the
Yeah.
same thing is going to happen. Our athletes have already broken the 50 freestyle world record, the premier record in swimming. I believe Fred Curley is going to break Usain Bolt's 100-meter world record at the first games next year. And as a consequence of that, everyone's going to say, oh, well, Fred Curley ran faster over 100 meters than Usain Bolt did. Therefore, he is the fastest man in the world. The old records don't matter. The new records do.
I think, man, it's so amazing to kind of hear that using the technology that we have today, right? I do want to touch back on what you were saying before on the medical supervision, right, Marcos, where every single athlete, the athletes that are coming into the enhanced games, their own cocktail might be different because they do play a different role in their own biochemistry. And it's really, really crazy. I think with some of those 50-meter swims, like, what was his name? I
Christian
have it
Golomev.
here. Christian Golomek and then James Magnuson. Like when I watch those little documentary from what happened last year, it is so insane to see what happened in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. So that's 6 months making it happen. So you kind of have to understand one person retired 6 years, 7 years out of competing. We give him a cocktail. Look at what happened. You give
Yeah.
someone else a cocktail that might be, already in the same category, but half the age maybe or younger age. It's like, what is possible? And now you've got, Fred Curley coming in for sprinting. And it's like in Las Vegas next year, I think it's going to be a great spectacle. And I agree. I think when you talk about these records, Art Marcos, this asterisk, this thing, I think for us as people, I personally, I'm just like, I'm here to see the fastest guy humanly possible, even if that does mean having performance enhancement. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and actually, these different categories of records exist in another way, which is Paralympic sport. So in
Yeah.
parasport, it is well recognized that enhancements are important, but they are engineered enhancement. They help an individual overcome what is often the case, a natural disability that's been
Mhm.
with them their entire life, and become an extraordinary athlete through
Yeah.
engineered enhancement. And of course, there are different classes of disabilities, different classes of enhancement. And to understand parasport, it's actually very complicated. I think there are up to 25 categories of competition based on different disabilities, different enhancement modalities. And what we haven't quite reckoned with, but we will over time, is recognize that there are human 1.0 records that were kept by the
Yeah.
Olympics. Right now, we're working on the human 2.0 records using a pharmacological enhancement. And then at some point, there will be human 3.0 records where things like brain computer interfaces, artificial intelligence, CRISPR gene editing technology come into play. And I was actually at Trinity College Dublin, which is sort of the Harvard of Ireland, last week. And I gave a speech, and a very bright student came up to me afterwards, and he asked me a very simple question. He said, what is the defining characteristic of being human? If we keep upgrading our systems in all these different ways, whether it's through IVF therapies, where conception is no longer natural, or CRISPR gene editing, where our gene expression isn't 100% human per se. When do we
Yeah.
cease to be human and start to become something new? And I asked him, I said to this student, I said, well, that's a very interesting question, which no one has yet asked me, and I don't have a good answer, but let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
What does it mean to be Irish? We were standing in Ireland. Is there a definitive characteristic of being Irish? Is having an Irish passport indication of being Irish? Or is having lived in the country a long period of time? Could a Japanese person move to Ireland and then they are Irish? Because I don't think the converse is true. I'm sitting in Japan right now, and I don't think that if one had merely moved here, if I had lived here for many decades, I don't think that would make me Japanese. And so what is it that makes us human? And I don't think that we as a community of academics or as lay scholars have really engaged with this question, and it's going to become a very important question because we're going to have to draw a line between man and machine.
Yeah.
And as
Yeah.
artificial intelligence gets better and better, and takes on properties of humanity, and maybe imitates humanity, are we going to give the special privileges that exist to our species to artificial intelligence, or will that encroach upon what it means to be human? And I think this is an important philosophical debate that's going to have very important practical implications in the coming years.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think the philosophies and the realities that we live in now are going to be, they're encroached. They're being questioned. They're being asked. Things are being split apart. Like I said, Marcus and I work in the world of optimization. I previously moved to another company where artificial intelligence is one of the backbones of this. And it's like, I'm learning these things. And it's like 10 years ago, this was like not necessarily where I was at, but now understanding how this world has changed, it's like it is here, it's coming, and it's going to be more apparent. So we have to really think about that.
Well, yes, and the I've made a study of this over the last few years. Science fiction becomes scientific reality. The first work of science fiction was Jules Verne's Journey to the Moon. It was written in 1859. It took 110 years for it to become scientific reality. HAL 9000 and 2001: A Space Odyssey took about 50 years to become Alexa. The Jetsons with the robot vacuum cleaner takes about 50 years to get to the Roomba. And so these questions that we are asking ourselves now about, like, what does it mean to be human? What are the definitive characteristics of mankind? Might sound like science fiction, but are going to be within, I think, certainly 2 decades, maybe 1 decade, be absolutely crucial to public policy discussions.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask this question. I think, Marcus, we were kind of on this line of thinking, kind of going back to what you're talking about, intelligence and things like this. This is one of the questions we keyed up, and it's a little bit layered there. When we think of optimized human performance, we're thinking of these spectacle things like races. I know you guys have a lot of swimmers. You just got Fred Curley in. I think you just got a new swimmer today, like an hour ago, that they just announced.
Bodie, he's a weightlifter.
Yeah, that's right. But what about, and one of the, like, instead of just physical output, what about cognitive output, cognitive enhancement, reaction time, neural performance? When you think of kind of the singularity, right? You think of like this question of like, what kind of human is it going to be? It's like almost bionic, where it's like this person can think 10 times faster because they have some enhancement beyond just like a nootropic or like a modafinil or something like that, where they're like, they can react fast. Do you see what maybe on the other side that on this curve that we can't see past yet, right? Of this physiological advancement, do you see like a lot of cognitive enhancements coming on as well?
Well, the most obvious one is brain-computer interfaces. So what
Okay.
Elon Musk, Neuralink is doing, BlackRock Neurotech, billions of dollars is being spent in this because we have this huge advancement in artificial intelligence and computing power, and yet we as humans are still these very simple meat computers, right? That's what we are. We are a meat computer. We're very good at it. But imagine what could be done if we could connect our meat computer to our silicon computer. And I don't think it's going to be very far away that we will have BCI interfaces. That technology is primordial at the moment, but Moore's law will apply. And then you will have a world where you'll have a team of football players, for example, all with BCI implants talking to each other, collaborating in real time to achieve a better outcome. And I think that will be, a BCI integrated football team will outcompete a natural humans team, right?
Yeah.
And I think actually this comes to another point about the structure of competition. is that when there are two parallel sporting competitions of natural sport on one side and enhanced sport on the other, the ultimate championship will be the enhanced Super Bowl winner against the natural Super Bowl winner. And it tees up a new modality of play because there are going to be some people who say, I'm very proud of being a human 1.0. That's going to be the
Yeah.
new conservatism. They're going to say, I reject all enhancement. I don't want to carry a phone around with me. I don't want to have a thing plugged into my brain. I don't want to take steroids or
Yeah.
hormone optimization. And, I call this the goop set. It's the kind of Gwyneth Paltrow types who will want to be natural. But then there will be some very obvious competition points where we will show that enhanced humans are truly better in every respect.
Yeah. And I'm actually kind of still kind of dumbfounded that I hadn't really thought about the computer in the brain component or the other types of augmentation for enhancement until you like made mention of this today. And I'm like, how can I be so how can I be so dumb in a sense? But
It's because you
this
don't have a silicon computer in your brain, right?
yeah, well,
We all need these enhancements.
well, and I think of like the 1.0 or the 2.0 version of that enhancement might just be like meta glasses that help you figure out like field of visual or like peripheral vision a little bit better. And then it leads to like the actual implant when it comes around in 5, 10 years or whatever that turns into. I'm just thinking of like the technology of today that's like, kind of on the fringes that are maybe becoming more acceptable, just even like in a social setting.
Yeah, so you think about like Apple Vision Pro goggles.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Imagine a javelin thrower had real-time decision support from Apple Vision Pro to throw their javelin, right? It's still
Yeah.
their physical muscles, but they're using computerized intelligence, or maybe a sharpshooter could use
yeah,
a head-up display. And, there are interesting iterations of this. If you go back to the Paris Olympics, we all remember the Turkish shooter,
yes,
right?
yeah,
He had no enhancement technology, right?
yeah,
He didn't need a special scope or any of this other stuff that all the other competitors used. He was just a lot better, and he was one of the breakout stars of the Paris Olympics because he was a supernatural human beating enhanced humans, and I think that makes for interesting drama. And drama and characterization is an important part of the narrative of sport. And so I would love to see the day that, Fred Curley is the fastest man in the history of the world. The enhanced games, we are pumping out world record after world record. Our athletes are so much faster. And then there's one genetic anomaly. Says, you know what, I'm 100% natural. I'm supernatural. I don't even need to wear shoes and I'm still going to beat all those enhanced athletes. That will be really interesting because we will want to assess their DNA, their training protocols, their epigenetics, and understand what is it inside their physiology, inside their psychology that allows them to outcompete the superhumans.
Yeah. That's the genetic freaks anomalies, right, Marcos?
Well, if you think about the movie Gattaca, right, the ultimate
yeah.
story of dystopian science fiction, Gattaca is the story of a natural human who overcomes the enhanced humans.
Once again,
Man, this
going back to sci-fi movie and explaining where it's going to bridge over.
Aaron's got the pop culture references on lock. His whole childhood was like boom, boom, boom,
In fact, as a child, my parents didn't allow us to watch television.
boom. Ooh.
Really? How
Yeah,
old are you?
no TV. I'm 40 years old.
Man, what
Yeah,
probably didn't
so
miss that. And
didn't miss that much, but yes, we weren't allowed to watch TV, and so yeah, I read a lot of books, but a lot of this pop culture references is things I picked up more recently.
Hey, your pop reference cultures are on point, man. They're sick.
so, like, in terms of what is, I guess, out there in pop culture relating to like where science fiction will become, nonfiction in a sense, right? What is, in your eyes, like, where's the connection point there? Like, what thing has happened in the last 10 years that someone has written about or has brought to the big screen that will inevitably be the thing that you think will happen next outside of like the brain interface technology?
Well, artificial intelligence is the perfect example of it. Like I'm literally sitting in Peter Thiel's house while I'm giving you this interview, sitting at a table that I sat at with, the people who run the global artificial intelligence industry today. That 10 years ago we were sitting here, over a glass of whiskey having a chat about it, and it sounded like science fiction, right? When
Yeah.
the idea of gigawatt hours of energy being consumed to train large language models was like a pure farce. We're talking about like dozens of nuclear power plants working for an entire year to train a computer model. And now that is absolute prime time. And that's how quickly discourse has changed. 10 years ago, artificial intelligence was an industry that was effectively dead. It had promised so much for so long, it didn't achieve anything. There were only about 40 people in the whole world who were interested in it, most of whom were in the UK at Oxford, and they were irrelevant. And today, it is now the dominant industry and created at least 10 companies over $1 trillion in market capitalization. And I think human enhancement will be that next great industry, because all the profits of capitalism go to healthcare. Whether we build roads, we build companies, we educate our population, all the profits of our system go to healthcare, because at the end of the day, what do we want as citizens? To live longer, healthier, happy lives. And that's why America spends 17% of GDP on healthcare, because it is the most profitable nation. It should be something Americans should be very proud of, in fact. And where will the vast majority of those healthcare dollars go? They will go to human enhancement technology, not just to make sick people less sick, but to make ordinary people extraordinary.
You got to first solve the admin cost issue with American healthcare. If you can do that, then you'll make
I'm good at a lot of things. In fact, I have a deck on my desk which I've been working on about solving some aspects of the American healthcare system. So
Ooh.
maybe
I
that's my
can't
next
wait.
project.
I can't wait to hear that. That's probably the real deal right there, because I know we were talking about my parents before this, but like my mom, you've heard of Kaiser here in the
Yeah,
States,
yeah, sure.
member services, part of the whole thing with the Obamacare, and like it just sounds. Both Marcos and I are both in kind of that healthcare, not reactive, proactive care, both in human optimization. But even there, even in the world's leading organizations around human optimization and kind of just bringing on medicine like 3.0 and things like this, there is still so much administrative physics that is like, why is there so much friction? Why is there no seamless integration? Why isn't it like the Amazons of the world? Why is even these things so difficult? So I feel that if you can figure that out, because I know for me, if I see someone, an athlete on the screen that inspires me not to just do that thing, but to also get enhanced, I would love to make sure there's a cost to it that is equitable, right? How do you, and maybe the question here is like, yeah, is that administrative thing here? One of the questions we teed up is like, how do you make sure, and I don't know how to ask this correctly, but like equitable,
Yeah.
fair
Well, you're asking
access.
you're asking another pop culture question, which is the Elysium question. We don't want a world in which the poor people live on Earth and the rich people live on some magical space station. And
Dang it.
the point about Elysium was that they had this machine that made you healthy, and
Mm.
all the rich people in space looked enhanced. And you see this today in the United States. Walk around Rodeo Drive or Miami Beach or Fifth Avenue, right? You see healthy, thin people who are using Ozempic. They're using hormone optimization. They have concierge doctors. They have good healthcare. They look enhanced. And then go down the street to Queens, right? Go down to South Central, and you'll see people who are not enhanced, who have poor access to healthcare, who look almost like a different species. And it's scary how the public policy decisions of healthcare have now manifested in such a tangible way in the United States. And so this is something which I'm acutely aware of, that human enhancement technology has the potential to dramatically exacerbate inequality in our society. And so at the same time, the single payer healthcare systems that exist in Europe, the massive social welfare systems designed to reduce these inequities in administration and the distribution of healthcare, are also in a perilous state because of the demographic collapse in Europe. You have fewer and fewer workers, more and more retirees. And now with this push against mass immigration, most of Europe looks like it will end up like Japan. And the scary part about Japan is that 25 years ago, there were 7 workers for every 2 retirees. Today, it's 50-50, right?
Oof.
For every retiree, there's only 1 worker left. It's a really scary world. And the Japanese government projects that within 200 years, only 2 centuries, the Japanese people will cease to exist. And that's how bad the demographic collapse is in Japan. Within 200 years, this civilization that has existed for millennia will cease to exist. 25% of the Japanese population will disappear in the next 25 years. That's how severe this is. And the solution that Western policymakers have had is mass immigration, but that's becoming very unpopular for a variety of other reasons. Solution, the technological solution is human enhancement. And so my thesis is that within the next decade, human enhancement technology will become mainstream, not because of a push from health ministries, but this will come from Treasury. Treasury is going to say we need more workers who can pay more taxes for longer, and we're not going to get those people through migration because of the social challenges. So we're going to need to push human enhancement technology to the mainstream. And I think what's going to be the greatest indicator of this is that next year in China and in Thailand, Ozempic and the GLP-1 drugs are going to go off patent. And they're going to go from being $1,200 a month to $6 a month. And we're going to see what the whole of population effect is. I believe we're going to see that obesity will be effectively cured in those countries. America's still about 10 years away from GLP-1s going off patent. But imagine a world where obesity is cured.
We spoke about this like 3 years ago. Marcus and I have an episode of like this utopia where literally Ozempic is just, in the water stream. Everyone is effectively
McDonald's would have to start charging, and they'll have health food options 3 years ago based off of the popularity that it gained. And you're right, like the transition to a generic version of it, which, I mean, I guess technically you have compounding pharmacies cutting costs in a sense with how they're doing that here in the States. Again,
It's still too expensive in the US.
For sure.
In America, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, but we're going to see this in the next 12 months in Thailand and in China. Ozempic is going to be affordable for absolutely everyone. Costs are going to go effectively to zero, and obesity will be cured.
I feel like everyone leaves America for like these human optimization things. They go somewhere else for stem cells. They go somewhere else for like these surgeries. It's like, it's like, oh, America needs to catch up.
The world's R&D, dude, and then the rest of the world gets to also, see more of the human randomized control trials as they have more affordable access to it. It's just, I guess, the way that it's working out, and it's fascinating to watch. But
well, that's also one of the drivers of income inequality is that wealthier individuals are mobile and can effectively play a regulatory arbitrage game. So, if I want to have, Philistine gene therapy treatment, I can go to Costa Rica and get it done with a mini circle guys. An average person cannot get that done. Regulation is patchwork throughout the world, and there are some treatments and protocols that are better in certain jurisdictions. Although, that being said, if I had a catastrophic health condition like cancer, I'd want to be treated in the United States. Still, the best quality of care, if you can afford it, is in the US.
Granted, it's James, did I tell you that Brittany got denied for health insurance?
No way.
Yeah, we moved Aaron. We moved my wife to her own policy through. We're trying to get one through United Healthcare. She's an independent business owner, so I was like, let's do it this way. We get more of a write-off, yada yada. We're going to actually save a little bit of money. And then because she was honest about like quote unquote pre-existing health conditions, because she did screening, she basically got denied for insurance through United Healthcare. And I'm just like, we're damned if we do, and then we're damned if we don't. The fact that there was a traceable history of a thyroid nodule that was biopsied and benign, and the fact that there was basically an EKG, essentially. They're like, yeah, no, this is irregularities and we won't cover you. Completely absurd. So, the thing that I've kind of also forgot to mention, and I've come to realize as we're talking here, is sport is kind of what allows for innovation. Like everything that's kind of happened as like a mainstay in today's world, sport kind of leads the way. Like the NFL utilizing these different technologies to make a better viewer experience, or the NBA or whatever it is, right? All those things I think have like critical value. So you going from the route of sport with the enhanced games probably then leads to more change, like you just said, about like innovations in other places, which I think will be amazing.
Well, and also sport is unique among the major fields of human endeavor in that it has a monopoly controller, which is the Olympics. So the Olympics authorizes certain governing federations in each major sport. And by and large, the Olympics have this absolute iron grip of control. And that's why they were able to implement the World Anti-Doping Code with such strong enforcement 40 years ago, and put a technology cap on innovation and technology in sports. And so by removing that, It's been so easy, in fact, to break world records. And it would be like the teachers' union banning computers in schools, right? Imagine if they
Mm.
did that in the 90s. The teachers' union says, nope, there can be no computers in school. Every student must handwrite everything. Well, then we would have not got the internet. We would have not got artificial intelligence, and we'd be stuck in the Stone Ages. And the same thing has happened in sports. And the enhanced games, we are proud of breaking that cap, and that will lead to trillions of dollars of innovation that will push
Yeah.
our species from 1.0 to 2.0 and well beyond.
Yeah, I think I think what you guys are doing is amazing. I felt like part of the thing that you guys did as well with the Olympic Committee and things like this. There was a lawsuit, right, with WADA. Break that lawsuit down. Was that mostly for, hey, look, we're suing WADA for athlete freedom? Was this like a strategic move to kind of stop the reign of this legacy control that we're kind of been thinking about, like that they've had, or what is it? What is it truly that you're getting with this lawsuit that you're like, I need to move an initiative forward?
Well, so the lawsuit principally is against World Aquatics, which is the governing federation of swimming. It also names USA Swimming and WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency. So World Aquatics brought in a new bylaw. It's called Bylaw 10 that will ban any individual, an athlete, an official, a timekeeper, even a fan who quote unquote supports the enhanced games.
That's ass.
So they could literally just, they could ban you guys from even attending the Olympic Games,
For
right?
even attending it, or even like maybe watching it on YouTube or something. That's ridiculous. Like,
Or even like liking a comment. Yeah. And why do they do this? We've talked a lot about the enhancement side of this. And I always say the enhanced games are not just the Olympics plus drugs, the Olympics plus drugs and money. We pay all of our athletes. And World Aquatics is hell-bent on exploiting their athletes. They want to ensure that swimmers don't make any money and that all the money is kept by the bureaucrats. And so your average swimmer only earns like 25 grand a year. And I'm talking about guys who are competing on the international circuit, the best specimens of our species, and they're earning less than some guy flipping burgers at a McDonald's. It's pure exploitation, and they thought we were a joke. They thought this was just some sort of comedic skit. And then Christian Galoma breaks the world record, and I handed him $1 million check. And they went into full meltdown mode, and they passed this ridiculous bylaw in an attempt to destroy our business. But of course, I'm a lawyer, and I'm a very good lawyer. I fully expected that they would do this, and I knew this from day one. And Section 1 of the Sherman Antitrust Act prevents a monopoly from exercising an illegal boycott, and this is textbook definition of this. And you can read, there are plenty of articles from eminent law professors saying that our case has actually very strong merits, and we are suing World Aquatics for $800 million.
woo, man, brilliant. First off, don't mess
Oh,
with, no worries. I
just take
think
a
the
pause
light.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think that there's a motion sensor that's probably telling me to stand up.
Don't worry. We'll do a little quick edit.
You can
I'll hold
you can
my
edit that one out. There we go.
yeah. We'll edit that. I'll wait for you to bring this back because I had a good line. What I was
Okay.
gonna say was that's why you don't mess with a top dog lawyer like Dr. Aaron D'Souza. You just don't mess with this guy. He knows his stuff. He's coming out to get you. But it to me, it's like they shot themselves in the foot with that, right? Because now you've kind of created this line in the sand, and it is this old age look, and it's like, well, what do you get as an athlete, right? Oh, I'm gonna stick with these guys. I'm gonna get $25,000 while I'm seeing everybody else. Yes, they may be on enhanced things, but it's being overseen. They're making more money. There's more eyeballs. Not only is the money from you guys, but from the eyeballs of being on social media, being different vendors, different sponsorships. So it's like, it seems to me you're creating so much opportunity for these guys to just say that. It's like, okay, what are we doing here, right? And I think,
Well, I think it's actually even simpler than that. If you are an athlete, if you're a good athlete, you only want to compete against the best. One high school athlete is waking up and saying, my goal in life is to be a Division 3 athlete. No, everyone wants to be in Division 1. Everyone wants to play Major League Ball. There's no kid out there who says, my dream is to play minor league ball. No, everyone wants to go play for the Yankees,
yeah,
right? And why we pick track, swimming, and weightlifting as the 3 sports to focus on is because they're objective.
yeah,
They're objective sports where time matters, right? Baseball, basketball, football are not about objective world records. There is a je ne sais quoi about the composition of a team, there's always a debate who's better. In track, swimming, and weightlifting, there are objective world records. And we will have all the objective world records. And athletes are going to say, well, you know what? I don't want to get a worthless gold-plated Olympic medal for being the best of the natural athletes. I just want to be the best. And there's something deep in our human biology about wanting to see the very best of human competition. And that's why no one watches the Commonwealth Games. No one watches the Asian Games. We all watch the Olympics because it's the ultimate avenue of human competition, but it won't be after the Enhanced Games. And to go to the economics of all of this, the Olympic Committee has one customer, which is NBC. NBC pays billions of dollars to broadcast each Olympic Games. Now, will NBC, and there's only one decision maker at NBC, pay billions of dollars to broadcast an old, slow sporting event? Will they pay billions of dollars to have their announcer in the flagship event say, the 8 fastest natural men in the world are lining up to break Usain Bolt's world record, right? The natural world record, the fastest natural men, and they're slower in every respect than even the B team at the Enhanced Games. They're not going to, right?
Yeah, that's so funny. I'm going to ask a question real quick, and Marcus, I'll let you have one. But just kind of going from there, like without obviously naming any names and stuff like that, like talking about these athletes, are there already like professional athletes coming on to you after this lawsuit or like different things where they've seen what you guys are putting out and they're like, you know, they're curious, maybe they're like a bit relieved, or they're still quietly aligning with you, but they're like, oh, I can't put it out there yet. I can't put it out there yet. Do you get a lot of this?
Yeah. I have like thousands of these people. Imagine the courage it takes for the first athlete, which was James Magnuson, and second athlete, Christian Kolometh. But then it becomes a snowball effect, right? One athlete, one world record. 2 athletes, 2 world records. 10 athletes, 100 athletes. And then that's a real competition. And a 21-year-old sprinter is going to say, wait a minute, Fred Kerley's 31 years old, and he's the fastest man in the history of the world. I'm younger, and with some enhancements, I could beat that and get the $1 million check. And this is the magic about what we're doing. I don't have to get Noah Lyles, who won the gold medal at the Paris Olympics, right? Because you can take the number 7 guy and make him number 1, right? And then this changes the entire dynamics of the competitive tension. And this is why the Olympics are so scared, where they are deeply petrified about what we're doing. And that's the surest sign of progress, right? You know, I was an advisor to Uber in its early days. How did Uber know that they were working? So they got sued all the time, right? You know, Airbnb, right? Towns and cities around the world were passing legislation against Airbnb, which is the surest sign of their success. And the fact that the International Olympic Committee, the World Anti-Doping Agency, and all these other legacy dysfunctional institutions are in total meltdown mode is a complete validation of what we do.
Yeah.
Taking number 7 to number 1, I mean, that dude was still, you know, vying for a top spot in the world, you know, at some point.
Yeah.
More than, I mean, truth be told, you know, okay, I'm 32. If I were to, you know, give my best bet at the best thing I'm, you know, good at, I'm still like a peon in comparison to people that are already at the most elite level. I don't think people even grasp the level of separation just to be like that good and world class, and then take it up a notch even further than that. I think I
didn't even realize this. So, you know, I thought like if you're a Division I swimmer for like Ohio State, like a very competitive school, that we could just pick up someone like that and they'll break a world record. They are, you know, the world record in the 50 free is about 21 seconds. You know, they're not even swimming 22 seconds, right? They're a full 5% off and have no chance whatsoever to get to that level, right? The difference between a lifetime of glory and fame and being completely unknown in swimming and in track is measured in the hundreds of seconds.
Yeah, we've seen it on the Olympics, but now we're going to see it in a whole new place to tune in on.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fascinating thing, and I like the fact that you said it's an objective measure that you're going after, in the sense of like the sports that you're having individuals compete in. Does it ever carry over into other events that are not as objective related, or is it always going to kind of be in this like track, field, swimming?
No. We're eventually going to expand to many more sports and hopefully run an entire global circuit where we have like a Formula One style warm-up and qualification events throughout the year, leading up to a multi-sport championship, because I think enhanced sport will just be better. It will just be better across every dimension. If you're Cristiano Ronaldo, the most followed man in the world on Instagram, wouldn't you want to be playing, in the Premier League, not in some, second tier Saudi league? But, his body is falling apart. He's 40 years old. And I think someone of his age and his standing would love to take performance enhancement so he could add another 5 years to his career. Wouldn't Tom Brady like to be still in the game? And he could do that if he had the ability to use medically regulated performance enhancements.
I feel like with Tom Brady, though, he took really good care of himself. He came back and crushed it, and he has a great routine. But yeah, you're absolutely right. If there was better recovery protocols, he could easily add maybe 10 years because he did the basics so good. I mean, this conversation right here makes me think of, Marcos, like what you were saying, Aaron, of like a warm-up circuit, kind of almost like a performance institute, like the UFC. I wonder what technologies would be made from like the strength and conditioning route. Because if human beings are, Marcus and I are like nerded about this before, but like if human beings are getting so super physiological, the normal strength and conditioning that we do today, we probably need like new technologies and new machines to like speed up their processing, speed up their training. I bet you that's a whole nother market that's going to come through.
Well, but also think, what's it going to be for an athlete who starts a enhancement regime in their 20s with improved recovery or propensity for injuries, and what is the compound effect of that over their entire career? It is going to be entirely possible that we're going to have athletes who are 50, maybe even 60 years old, who are still, competitive in the Premier League. And I think this is going to be the greatest gift that I can give to mankind: a 65-year-old who can run faster than Usain Bolt, because 65 is the retirement age. And for policymakers around the world, they've not been able, for a variety of political reasons, to change the retirement age. It's the third rail of American politics. Reagan, Carter, and every president since has tried to raise the eligibility age in Social Security, but it's been politically intractable. But if we could make it culturally possible, say, wait a minute, an athlete just ran a 10-second 100-meter at age 65. Why should we be retiring and say, hey, life is over at 65?
Yeah.
And I think that will be a tremendous change for our society, and a very positive one.
And kind of circling back to what you mentioned too about again, like the quality of years, right? And then also how it relates to like decline of like societies such as in Japan, right? Where if you now have a able-bodied individual by the age of 70, 75, and you extend the years at which they're contributing in a working environment in a sense, do you think that that's going to have better ramifications like globally as well? Or does that help stave off some of these issues of like collapses of civilizations around the world?
Well, so your typical human spends about 30 years preparing for adulthood, childhood, university, workplace training. And then we get about 30 years of work, and then about 30 years of retirement. Now, through human enhancement technology, let's say we could add 5 or even 10 years of productivity. Let's say it's 10 for easy math. That doesn't add 1/3 to net factor productivity. It probably adds 50 to 100%, because those 10 years aren't put at the front, they're put at the back, right? It makes those from age 60 to 70 more productive and paying higher tax when they're at their peak earning, their peak human capital years. And so McKinsey did this great report and showed that the total value of artificial intelligence to our entire society is worth about $1.3 trillion a year. The value of just 1 year of human enhancement, of age reversal, is worth 14 trillion to our economy. To make Social Security sustainable will only take raising the retirement age by 3 years. And so these are actually very simple steps which technologies like Ozempic can already achieve. And as the enhanced movement progresses, so many more of these technologies will come into reality.
Man, that's beautiful.
In the weightlifting thing, I'm assuming a lot of these individuals will probably be using some weight loss drugs to help maintain the weight that they need to and have peak performance. Obviously, I wonder if it is going to be a banned substance from WADA, or if it already is. I have no idea. But that number is staggering. So you're saying 14 million or trillion? 14 trillion?
14 trillion. That's the entire GDP of the United States. That's like adding,
That's insane.
to 1 year of age reversal is worth the entire GDP of the US to the global economy.
And stack that across multiple populations, multiple people, multiple cultures. Dang.
How do they figure that number out? kind of curious. Is it just like actuarial sciences understanding? Like you just said, it's because your highest earning years would be later on, so you add that 1 year where it's like your highest earning year, and it kind of
Yeah,
how it works out.
you add your highest earning year back in, and you take 1 year out of the pension system.
Mm.
So pensions are the biggest cost to any developed economy, whether it's France or Germany, Japan, or the United States. Pensions, Social Security, and healthcare are the major costs to the U.S. government.
Yeah, and then to be able to
Yeah.
gotcha. So you don't take it for that year, but it's also the highest earning, and then that number multiplies very quickly.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, enhancement. I mean, I guess now I kind of understand, Seamus, why so many people are so effing like into understanding their biological age and looking at their blood work to see quote these chronological ages, because it does have maybe some more implications as to like later years of life versus someone in their 30s.
Think about this. If you're Rupert Murdoch or Warren Buffett, they're worth hundreds of billions of dollars, what would you pay to have one more year, one more really good year?
I was gonna say anything, really.
Undefinable.
Yeah, it would be measured in at least tens of billions of dollars. And I think everyone would do that, right? Does anyone want to end up in a nursing home, old, crippled, and disabled? No. And that is why all the profits of capitalism go into healthcare. And eventually, most of the spending will not be on making sick people less sick, but making ordinary people more productive and healthier for longer. And that is enhancement
Yeah.
technology, which is best demonstrated on the sporting field.
That is, I really want to shout you out, Aaron, because it's like through games, which is the craziest thing, through play, through games, through play, through records, you inverted the whole paradigm. Through this enhanced games, let's just say it's just a spectacle, but because of this, eyes on, you're not just building like another sports thing. No, it's a whole legacy defining thing. Once this penetrates, everyone's gonna look at life so much differently. Like I know Marcos and I are in this, like the Peter Attias of the world, all the people that are trying to focus on optimization and things like that. But it's now when it's put on display, people are going to start thinking and really accessing parts of their mind and imagination that are like, oh shit, I can do that. And you're going to change bureaucracy, you're going to change processes. I think that's the biggest thing, though, is like, beyond just athlete freedom, I think, and beyond like the corruption that you've seen in different games and different stuff, it's going to be so much bigger than that. I think it's unprecedented what you're going to do, because I think there are things that we haven't fully fleshed out that are going to come through.
Well, let me leave you with a parting thought, which is that there have been so far 9 ages of mankind: the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, the Middle Ages, the Age of Enlightenment, industrialization, and in our lifetimes, the atomic, space, and information ages. 9 ages. Now, it feels almost outdated to say we live in the information age. It feels very Bill Gates, 1980s, the information superhighway, a PC on every desk. So then I ask you the question, what is the next age of mankind going to be? And I think there are only 2 options. One is the artificial intelligence age, where the machines become superior to the humans and the humans become irrelevant. Or we have the enhanced age, an age where technology enhances the human condition. It makes us physically stronger, mentally more resilient, civilizationally more powerful. And one is a dystopian vision of the future, and one is a utopian vision of the future. And my goal is to bring the enhanced age into existence, because just like in the atomic age, where atomic supremacy was key, or in the space age, where space supremacy was key, if we understand ourselves to be in the enhanced age, government, public policy makers, companies will see their mission as part of being this wider civilizational arc to enhance humanity and to bring this new version of mankind into existence and keep upgrading ourselves. And that is not a scientific, that is not a political or an economic judgment, that is a cultural and a philosophical one. And that's why philosophy is so powerful. It enlightens our mind to thinking about our culture and our way of being in a new way. And that, I hope, is my gift to the world, of inviting the world into this new age through sports.
Couldn't have been said any better. Well, we're close to an hour. Marcus, you want to close us off on some closing remarks, my man?
I do have one more question for you.
Go ahead.
Do you feel as though there is an age that is too young to start enhancement?
Yes, I believe that the fundamental human right is not freedom of speech or freedom of association. It's the freedom over our own body. And bodily sovereignty is very important. It is the most important of human rights. And I define bodily sovereignty as an adult with free and informed consent can do to their body what they wish. A child is unable to give consent. And that's why transgenderism among adults is unproblematic in our society. We accept that an adult, if they feel it necessary, can surgically remove their genitals and take hormone therapies. That is their choice. And that's a very valid choice to be made. What is ethically problematic is enabling children to make that choice for themselves, where we as a society have decided that children are not able to give consent under most circumstances. And so in that same dimension, I believe that enhancement should be something reserved for adults, although we need to recognize that parents today are undergoing CRISPR gene editing treatment on embryos. So embryos are being enhanced in a one-way street by their parents before they could ever give consent, right? That's already happening today. In wealthy codes in America, up to 6% of boys are now on growth hormones because parents have realized that if their sons are not over 6 foot tall, they're going to have trouble finding a girlfriend on Tinder. There's a lot of discrimination against short men. They're going to earn less money. So enhancement is being done on children today, but I think we as a society need to develop an intellectual framework for this, and it leads to a lot of ethical potholes.
Is it an exact age, or is it more of like, because I feel like adulthood varies per individual, going back to this whole thing. Is it 18? Is it 21? Is it 24?
Well, we as a society, at least in Western society, have agreed that there's a hard and fast definition of adulthood. It begins at 18 because that's when we finish mandatory secondary education. We can drive, we can vote, we can consume alcohol. And 18 has largely been viewed as that gate. I don't believe that is a hard and fast rule. There might be some intellectual flexibility, but it needs to be something objective, not subjective. And this is why the childhood transgenderism debate has gotten so politically toxic, because it challenges these ideas of consent in such profound and often surgically irreversible ways.
Yeah.
I often wonder if it's like that full quote unquote frontal lobe development age where it's like you're truly there, but I do feel like it's a little bit different for people. So that was just my questioning about that. 'Cause, again, the purists of the world, saying you're too young to start anything, X, Y, Z, and they're like, why would you start? If you start this thing, you can never come off of it. And so it's just more like the old school trope of thinking. We're not there. Me and Seamus, we are, optimistic on optimization, and we think that more people should, tap into that, because you can have higher quality years earlier on, and being able to see the higher quality years for people in the later years, the jobs that we've done in the last 7 years of clinical, work is quite profound and amazing. So having more people have access and do it, witness it, and create a new movement, I think is amazing. And thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time. I know Seamus and I could not be more stoked and happy, and especially that it worked in your schedule during your honeymoon, which is amazing. We feel very honored. So thank you very much, Dr. Aron. And Macro Perspective peeps, if you liked this, go ahead and give us a shout out in some way, shape, or form. Whether that's a comment, a like, a subscribe. All those things are very helpful for helping our channel grow. We have, I think, done a fairly good job, Seamus, at this point. For something that started as a pipe dream 3 years ago has led to some massive guests. And Dr. Aron, you are amongst that top tier, and we're super grateful for your time. And we can't wait for everybody to hear this in a couple weeks. And yeah, guys, until next time, Macro Perspective, we are out.